Welcome to Sensitive and the City, the podcast for empaths, highly sensitive people, and intuitive women trying to live, love, work, and function in a world that often feels like it has the volume turned up just a little too high. I'm Heidi, and today we're starting with the big one, city life. The noise, the people, the buildings, the traffic, the hurry, the emotional static, the lights, the sirens, and the invisible pressure to move faster, respond quicker, care less, need less, feel less, and somehow still remain hydrated, moisturized, emotionally available, and vaguely pleasant in public. This is no small assignment for sensitives. If you are highly sensitive, empathic, intuitive, or just someone whose nervous system seems to pick up information before your brain has properly been briefed, living in a city can feel like trying to meditate inside of a blender. And I say that as someone who loves parts of city life because I myself live in a very large, very busy city. I love the creativity, the opportunity, the possibilities, the restaurants, the people, the little pockets of beauty tucked between the concrete and the coffee shops. And I'm not here to tell you that every sensitive person needs to abandon the city, move to a forest, grow herbs, wear linen permanently, and speak only to the crows that you've befriended. Although on certain days, I totally understand, and that's fair enough. What I do want to talk to you about today is how to live in a city without letting the city live inside of your body. Because that is often what happens for us sensitives. You don't just move through the city. In a sense, the city moves through you. You absorb the pace of it. You register the emotional temperature of it. You feel the impatience in the traffic, the tension in the supermarket queue, the pressure in a crowded cafe, the mood of a meeting room, the agitation on a train, the sadness of a passing stranger, the invisible exhaustion of a building full of people trying to just make it. And then you wonder why you get home feeling flat, wired, puffy, foggy, irritable, teary, hungry, numb, overstimulated, and also at the same time feeling strangely lonely. You might tell yourself maybe you're being dramatic or just too much, and you might compare yourself to people who seem to move through the same city with the emotional range of a stapler and think, why can't I just get on with it? Or why can't I just be like them? But the issue is not that you are failing at city life. The issue is that your system is processing more of city life than most people realize even exists. And this is where we need to get much more intelligent about sensitivity. Not more performative, not more spiritual butterfly wallpaper, but more intelligent. Because a sensitive system is not just emotionally sensitive, it is also environmentally sensitive. It is relationally sensitive. It is rhythmically sensitive. It is atmospherically sensitive. It notices pace, pressure, sound, facial expressions, tone, lighting, tension, obligation, power dynamics, noise pollution, emotional residue, and the strange energetic soup that forms when too many people are crammed into one space, pretending that they're not stressed at all. Your body is not making this up. That's the first thing that I want you to understand. It is just simply interpreting your environment. And if we don't understand that, we end up pathologizing what's actually heightened perception. So today I want to help you understand why urban life can feel so loud in your body, what is actually happening beneath that overwhelm, and most importantly, how you can support yourself in practical ways without having to turn your life into a full-time healing project. Because honestly, nobody has time to do 90-minute clearing sessions every time someone breathes aggressively near them on public transport. Sydney trains, I'm talking to you here. We need tools that work in real life. So let's begin with the first important shift. The city is not just a location. It is an input field. So when most people think of environment, they think of where they are, like where they're located in time and space, a street, an office, a train station, the shopping center, a restaurant, a high-rise apartment building, or a cafe. But for a sensitive person, environment is not just place. Environment is also data, because every space is giving you information. The lighting gives you information. The sound gives information. The density of people gives you information. The emotional tone gives you information. The architecture, the pace, even the lack of nature gives you information. Your system is reading all of this often before your conscious mind ever catches up, because these environments have become so normalized. And this is why you might walk into a shopping center feeling perfectly fine, and 20 minutes later, you feel like your soul has been put through the tumble dryer. Nothing obvious happened. No one yelled at you. You didn't have a dramatic encounter. You just entered an environment with bright lights, layered noise, competing smells, unpredictable movement, social proximity, advertising, decision fatigue, and a whole lot of people carrying their own private energetic weather systems. Your nervous system had to process all of it. And when your nervous system is constantly processing, you use energy. And this is something that many sensitive people underestimate. You are not only spending energy when you're doing something obvious, like exercising, working, cleaning, parenting, running a business, or navigating a difficult conversation. You are also spending energy when you are processing. You are spending energy when you are tracking the emotional undercurrent of a room. You are spending energy when your body is filtering sound, when your brain is trying to make sense of competing stimuli. You are spending energy when your system is scanning for safety in a crowded place. And if you have a history of having to be emotionally aware for survival, approval, belonging, or peacekeeping, then your system may be even more tuned towards environmental scanning. Not because you're broken or there's anything wrong with you, but because your body learned to read rooms before it learned to rest in them. And that sentence, I feel, really matters. Your body may have learned to read rooms before it learned to rest in them. And perhaps this is something that you are even still trying to learn now. And city life gives the body a lot of rooms to read, and all at once. This is why we need to stop treating urban overwhelm as if there's something wrong. It is often just a capacity issue. And capacity is different from strength. You can be strong and still overloaded. You can be capable and still overstimulated. You can be intelligent, spiritual, emotionally mature, self-aware, and still need to leave a loud restaurant because the acoustics are bombarding your nervous system. Capacity is about how much your system can hold, process, and integrate before it starts sending signals that it has had enough. And those signals are not always obvious at first. For some people, the early signal is irritability and overstimulation. And now suddenly everyone is annoying. The person walking slowly in front of you becomes your personal villain. The cafe music becomes offensive. The person chewing nearby might as well be operating heavy machinery. For others, the signal is fatigue. You feel heavy, slow, foggy, or disconnected, and your body wants to withdraw. For some, it's anxiety. Your heart rate lifts, your breathing changes, your thoughts speed up, and everything feels urgent. And even for others, it's body discomfort, tight jaw, shallow breath, pressure in the chest, headache, gut symptoms, skin sensitivity, and a sense of being physically filled with static. For some, it becomes emotional. You suddenly feel sad, lonely, or teary, and you don't necessarily know why. And for many sensitive people, the signal is food craving, especially sugar, carbs, salt, or anything that gives your body that quick sense of comfort, grounding, or even stimulation. Listen, we're going to talk about weight and the sensitive body in another episode because actually that deserves its own full conversation, but it's also worth naming here. Sometimes cravings are not a lack of discipline. Sometimes they are your nervous system just simply trying to regulate quickly with the tools that it knows and that are at hand in that moment. So instead of shaming the signal, we are going to learn how to interpret it. And that's the next shift. Because your symptoms are not always the problem. Sometimes they're the message. I like to see them as kind of messengers. The symptoms, they're just giving you information. However, that does not mean that we ignore medical issues. And this is a really important thing when you're on your spiritual journey. Please do not spiritually bypass your blood tests or going to the doctor. If something is persistent, painful, unusual, or concerning, go and check it out. Go and get proper medical support. We are grounded here. We don't necessarily just put a crystal on a thyroid issue and call it a day, however helpful that crystal may feel to you. But once you've ruled out what needs to be ruled out, it is worth asking, what is my body communicating about my environment? This is one of the most practical skills a sensitive person can develop. Instead of asking what's wrong with me, ask what input have I been processing? That one question can literally change everything. Going through an internal checklist may consist of something like the following. What input have I been processing today? Was I in a crowded space? Was I under artificial lighting for hours? Was I in a conversation where someone emotionally unloaded on me? Was I moving too quickly from one thing to another? Was I exposed to too much noise? Was I around conflict, tension, or pressure? Was I scrolling through distressing content and calling it just catching up? Was I inside all day without sunlight, fresh air, or visual distance? Was I making too many decisions? Was I pretending I was fine when I was already well past my capacity? So this is how you start to build pattern recognition. And pattern recognition is power for a sensitive person. Not power over other people, obviously, because we don't do that, but power over your own system and within your own system. Because once you understand your patterns, you stop being surprised by your own collapse, if and when that does happen. You stop saying, why am I like this? And you start saying, of course I feel like this. I spent 4 hours in meetings. I answered 30 messages. I walked through peak hour crowds to get to the train station. I ate lunch at my desk. I ignored my body. I had no silence or space. And then wondered why I wanted to bed rot as soon as I walked through my door. That's really not a mystery. It's just maths. Sensitive maths, but maths. So let's talk about the tools. The first tool is what I call the urban input audit. This is not complicated, it's not glamorous, and it will not require you to do any extreme yoga positions. At the end of the day, or even halfway through the day, take 2 minutes and ask yourself, What were the 5 biggest inputs my system processed today? Now, I want to differentiate this here. Not tasks, but input. There's a difference, and I'm going to explain it to you. A task is I went to work. An input is I sat under fluorescent lights for 7 hours while listening to 3 people talk over each other in a meeting. A task is I went grocery shopping. An input is I walked through a crowded supermarket with bright lights, loud noise, people rushing, too many choices, and no personal space. A task is I caught the train. An input is I stood in a small moving container full of strangers, body odor, headphones leaking sound, if headphones are even used at all, someone's anger, someone's sadness, and the mild existential threat of peak hour. Those 2 things are very different, but your body does not respond to the category of the task. I want you to think about that. It responds to the input inside of the task. So, I invite you to write down or mentally note the 5 major inputs that you've experienced in a day or in the morning, and then ask which one cost me the most. Now, this builds internal discernment, and over time you might discover that noise drains you more than people, or that emotional tension drains you more than crowds, or that maybe artificial lighting affects you more than you realized, or that your commute is the thing quietly stealing your life force while you're pretending to be normal. So once you know the input, you can adjust the support, because the generic self-care does not work if it does not match the input. If sound is the input, you may need silence, noise-reducing headphones, or a sound buffer. If emotional tension is the input, you may need emotional decompression, not just an Epsom salt bath. If visual stimulation is the input, you might need dim light, closed eyes, nature, or sitting next to a window if you're in an office to feel some natural light. If pace is the input, you might need to slow down, not learn more productivity hacks or hustle harder. If social density is the input, you may need solitude with, of course, outfilling guilt. The second tool is called the 3-point arrival. So this is when you transition from city back into your own space, or really into any space at all, because many sensitive people carry the whole day home with them. They walk in the door physically, but energetically and emotionally, they're still on the train, in the office, in the conversation, or in the noise. And then they wonder why they snap at their partner, they're irritated by their children, they avoid messages, or they stand in the kitchen stuffing their face with crackers or chocolate or a glass of wine. The body hasn't arrived yet. So before you fully enter your evening, pause for even 90 seconds. Place one hand on your lower belly, one hand on your chest. Feel your feet on the floor. Then you say to yourself, either quietly or out loud, I am here now. The day is complete enough for this moment. I give my body permission to return to this room right now. Take 3 slower breaths and then name 3 neutral things you can see. Not necessarily beautiful things, not things that mean so much to you, but neutral things like the table, the wall, the coffee cup. Why neutral? Because when your nervous system has already been overstimulated all day, it does not always need extra inspiration. Sometimes it just needs orientation, and neutral observation tells the body, we're not solving anything right now. We are here, just here in this moment. This is simple, but simple is not the same as weak. The nervous system often responds best to clear, repeated cues of safety. The third tool is sensory subtraction. Many sensitive people try to regulate by adding more things. More music, more scrolling, more podcasts, more information, more spiritual practices, more crystals, more herbal tea, more incense, more tabs open in the browser of the soul and the mind and the energy. But after a day in the city, your system may not need more. It definitely is, I'm just going to call it, it needs less. Sensory subtraction means deliberately removing input before adding support. Before you decide what you need, ask, what can I reduce? Can I turn off overhead lights? Yes, definitely. Can I put my phone in another room for 20 minutes? Can I sit without background noise? Can I change out of restrictive clothes? I know for myself, as soon as I walk through the front door, even if I've just been to the supermarket, I'm straight into my track pants. Can I stop talking for a few minutes? Can I lower the visual clutter around me? Can I eat without watching something or distracting myself somehow? Can I take a shower and imagine the day leaving my skin, not in a dramatic way, but like in a practical, please remove the emotional pollution from my soul kind of way? Because the city adds layers, and regulation often begins by removing those layers. The fourth tool is the threshold pause. This one is especially useful in urban life because city living involves constant transitions, as I mentioned previously. Home to street, street to car, car to office, office to cafe, cafe to meeting, meeting to train, train to supermarket, supermarket to home. You get it. So every threshold is an opportunity to reset, but most people rush through these thresholds unconsciously. And unfortunately, sensitive people often pay for that because if you don't pause between environments, your system can start blending them together. The office comes into the supermarket comes into the house, the stranger's mood comes into your dinner, the meeting comes into your sleep. So use your physical thresholds as cues. Before you enter your workplace, pause for one breath and ask, what quality do I need to bring in with me? Before you leave work, ask, what am I not taking home? Before you enter your home, ask, what does my body need first? Before you enter a social space, ask, what is my boundary tonight? This is not about becoming precious. It's about becoming deliberate. A sensitive person without deliberate transitions can end up dragged by the momentum of every environment they pass through. Remember what I said at the very beginning of this conversation. It's like the city is moving through your body. So we have to create some delineation. A sensitive person with deliberate transitions starts to become internally led. And that is a very different life. So the fifth tool is creating city anchors. A city anchor is a place, object, routine, or even a sensory cue that reminds your body of steadiness. Most sensitive people need more anchors than probably they think. Not because they're fragile, but because urban life is full of movement, novelty, and constant interruption. Anchors give your system something familiar to return to. So, a city anchor might be a particular tree you visit on your lunch break. It might be a quiet cafe where the lighting is gentle and nobody seems to be aggressively blending anything. It might be a route that you walk that has more sky and less traffic or fewer people. It might be wearing a scarf with a texture that feels calming. It might be a playlist you only use when transitioning out of work mode. And it might be a particular herbal tea you drink when you arrive home, for example. You might also think about like keeping a plant on your desk. Not because they're necessarily magical, but frankly, they do have a certain quiet authority, and your nervous system really benefits from organic form, texture, and another living presence. It might be a weekly visit to the water, ocean, harbor, river, pond, fountain. Even if you live in the middle of concrete, water can soften the internal pace. The important thing is that the anchor is repeated. Repetition creates recognition. Recognition creates safety. And safety creates capacity. And this is where we move from occasional self-care to environmental design. And this is like a cutting-edge shift I want sensitive people to understand. You do not only need emotional tools, you need environmental intelligence. You need to know how to design your life in a way that respects your system. Not perfectly, not expensively, and not in a way that requires moving to a retreat center full-time. But in small, consistent ways, right? Consider this to be your energetic hygiene routine. For example, if you know that your nervous system struggles with noise, then noise management is not a luxury, it's actually part of your health practice. If you know that you struggle with bright lighting, then softer lamps at home are not just decor, they are regulation tools. I personally think the big light should be considered a crime against humanity, but that's just me, I guess. If you know you absorb the pace of others, then building slower transitions into your calendar is not laziness, it's leadership. For example, on the days that I work with clients, I always create a small time window between each session in order to recalibrate myself. It's like, shaking off the energy of the previous session and the previous client's energy so I can be fresh and clear for my next client and so I can deliver my best self. And when I didn't used to do that and do back-to-back readings, sometimes 40 readings a week, I think we can all guess where that landed me, and it was nowhere good. So take it from me. I've lived through it. Don't be like Heidi. Just take her advice. So if you know you become dysregulated in crowded supermarkets, then shopping online or shopping at quieter times is not avoidance. And most supermarkets are open till, 11 o'clock at night. It's intelligent energy management to understand what impacts you the most and then creating workarounds. Because this is where many people they get stuck. They think support only counts if it looks impressive. But support often looks like moving the laundry basket so your visual field is calmer. It looks like eating before the social event so you don't arrive hangry and overstimulated. It looks like choosing the quieter route, even if it takes 5 minutes longer. It also looks like not booking back-to-back appointments when you already know that your body hates that nonsense. It looks like leaving the party at 9:30 before your system turns into an internal disco ball. There is a point where you have to stop negotiating with what you already know to be true. And that brings me to one of the deeper concepts in this episode, in this conversation. A lot of sensitives and a lot of their overwhelm comes from self-abandonment disguised as normal functioning. I want you to think about that, and I want you to think about every time in your life you've abandoned yourself to appear normal, to fit in, to be okay. That might sound a little sharp, but just stay with me. Because every time your body says this is too much and you say stop being ridiculous, you are teaching your system that its signals will be ignored. Every time you know you need a pause, but you push through because you don't want to inconvenience anybody, You teach your body that other people's comfort comes before your regulation. Every time you override your hunger, your exhaustion, your sensory overload, or emotional discomfort in order to appear easygoing and easy to get along with, capable or low maintenance, you actually create an internal split. A split between your inner experience and your outer behavior. And that split is absolutely exhausting. Many sensitive women are not only tired from the city, they are tired from performing, being less affected by the city and their environment and their relationships than they actually are. And they often tend to surround themselves with people who just don't get it. And that performance has a huge cost. So the work is not to become more dramatic about your needs. The work is to become more honest. You can be honest without making everything a crisis. You can say, I'm going to step outside for 5 minutes. I'd love to come to dinner, but I'm only going to stay for the meal. You can say, do you have a quieter table? You can say, I'm not available for that tonight. You can say, I've had a lot of input today, so I'm going to have a quiet evening at home. And you do not need to present a court case for your nervous system, all right? You don't need to over-explain. You don't need to give them all of the details from A to B or A to Z of why you can't make it. And this is what I want for sensitive women in Sydney. It's not withdrawal from life, but participation with self-respect. Because there is a difference between hiding from the world and choosing how you meet it. Some sensitive people do need seasons of retreat, and that is absolutely valid. There are times when the body needs restoration, especially after burnout, grief, trauma, illness, and long time overextension. But the ultimate goal is not to become someone who can only function under perfect conditions either, because that makes life really small. The goal is to build enough self-knowledge, enough regulation, enough boundaries, enough emotional and environmental intelligence, and enough recovery rhythm that you can engage with the world without being consumed by it. And that is the art of being sensitive in the city. You do not harden, you become skilled. Now, I want to give you a practical daily rhythm that you can try, especially if you work or live in a busy urban environment. Think of it as like a city sensitive reset rhythm. In the morning, before you pick up your phone, give yourself 3 minutes of body contact. Sit on the edge of the bed, feel your feet, place a hand somewhere grounding and ask, what is my capacity today? Not, what do I have to do? That question is going to arrive soon enough. Don't worry about it. But ask, what is my capacity today? Some days your capacity is high. Wonderful, great, use it wisely. Some days your capacity is medium. Adjust your expectations. And some days your capacity is going to be low. Move gently and do not spend the whole day morally attacking yourself for being human. Then ask, what is one input I can reduce today? Maybe it's less doom scrolling, maybe it's taking lunch outside, and maybe it's not joining a gossip-heavy conversation, which is actually full of psychic projections that you're picking up. Maybe it's wearing comfortable clothes, maybe it's using headphones, maybe it's leaving 10 minutes earlier so you're not rushing. One input reduced can change the entire nervous system load of a day. And during the day, use one threshold pause, just one. Before entering or leaving a major environment, take one breath and ask, what am I choosing here? That interrupts the autopilot. And in the afternoon, especially if you notice cravings, irritability, or fog, do not immediately assume you are undisciplined or failing. Ask, do I need food, water, movement, silence, sunlight, or maybe a boundary? Most urban dysregulation is not solved by more thinking. It's solved by meeting a body need that you have been ignoring. It might even be, do I need to go to the bathroom, that you've been holding on all day? Then, in the evening, use the 3-point arrival. Feet, breath, neutral objects, like we discussed earlier. Let your body know that the city is no longer in charge. And this is simple enough to practice, but deep enough to change how you relate to your sensitivity. Because the deeper identity shift here is this: you are not someone who has to survive the city by disconnecting from yourself. You are someone learning how to remain connected to yourself inside stimulation. And that is a powerful shift. And it's very different from the old model where sensitive people are told to toughen up, avoid everything, stop crying, and spiritually protect themselves in a bubble of white light from every passing human with a bad mood. We are going beyond that. We are developing discernment. We are learning capacity. We are working with our bodies. We are not rejecting them anymore. We are designing environments. We are respecting the nervous system. And we are not outsourcing our well-being to perfect conditions. Because the city will not always be quiet. And people will not always be regulated. The office will not always be calm. And the train will not always smell like lavender and emotional maturity. So the question becomes, how do I stay in relationship with myself here? Not later, when I finally get away, not someday when life slows down, but right now, right here, in the city, in the noise, in the workday, in the queue or the line, in the crowded cafe, in the apartment, in the middle of the modern life, with all its strange little demands and fluorescent personality defects. How do I stay with myself here? That is the practice. So before we finish, I want to leave you with a reflection. Think about the environments you move through most often. Your home, your workplace, your commute, your local shops, your social spaces, your online spaces, because yes, digital environments count. Your nervous system does not care that it came through a screen. It still has to process the input. Now, ask yourself, which environments expand me? Which environments compress me? Which environments make me feel clear? Which environments make me feel foggy? Which environments make me abandon my own rhythm and needs? And which environments help me come back to myself? Listen, you don't have to change everything at once. That's not what I'm asking you. In fact, please don't, because sensitive people can sometimes turn self-development into a renovation show and start knocking down internal walls before checking if the plumbing works. Choose one environment, just one. Start there, start small. And then ask, what is one small change I can make to support my system here, within this space, within this environment? Because maybe your home needs a quieter landing space when you walk in. Maybe your desk needs less clutter. Maybe your commute needs headphones or a different route, or maybe staggering your work time. Maybe your lunch break needs daylight. Maybe your social life needs clearer starts and finish time. Maybe your phone needs firmer boundaries because it's become a tiny rectangular city yelling at you constantly from your hand. But one change. That's enough to begin with, because regulation is not built through grand gestures. It's built through repeated experiences of consistently choosing and returning to yourself. And the more you return to yourself, the less the city gets to decide who you are. You can live in a loud world without becoming loud inside. You can move through intensity without merging through it. You can love the city and still need some quiet. You can be sensitive and you can still be powerful. You can be open and still have really clear boundaries. You can participate in the modern world without handing your nervous system over at the door. And that is what Sensitive and the City is really all about. It's not about escaping life. It's learning how to inhabit it differently. So I invite you this week, try the Urban Input Audit. At the end of each day, name the 5 biggest inputs your system processed. Then choose one adjustment that would make tomorrow even 5% easier on your body. 5% matters. 5% repeated becomes a different life. And if today has already been a lot, start even smaller. Just put your feet on the floor. Take a slow, deep breath. Look around the room. Name one thing that's not asking anything from you. Just let your body arrive. You are here now, and the city can wait. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Sensitive in the City. If this episode, this conversation has helped you understand your system in a new way, please do come back for the next episode, and also share this episode with someone you know that this is definitely going to help. We're going to talk about the social hangover in the next episode and why socializing can exhaust sensitive women even when they genuinely love people. And please do remember to subscribe to my channel, whether you're listening to it on YouTube or where you get your podcasts. And I will see you you will hear me in the next episode. But until then, remember, regulation first and then intuition follows.